Have you ever just completely ruined your own life in like 5 seconds? Yeah, that was me last month when I accidentally sent screenshots of our girls' group chat to my husband instead of my friend Jess. The absolute worst part? He was in the bathroom jerking off while I was literally making fun of him for jerking off. I'm not even making this up. I'm Mandy, 34, and I've been married to Keith for almost 9 years, with 2 kids, Emma, who's 7, and Liam, who's 5. Let me back up a bit. Keith and I used to be that couple that everyone envied. He was fit, ambitious, and actually listened when I talked. I was totally into him. Fast forward through 2 kids and a mortgage, and everything changed. Keith put on like 40 pounds, developed this gross dad bod, and completely stopped trying. Meanwhile, I kept myself together. Gym 3 times a week, watching what I eat, the works. But it wasn't just his looks. He became this passive guy who'd rather hide in his home office than deal with actual problems in our marriage. My outlet became our girls' group chat. Me, my sister Taylor, and 5 of my closest friends. It started innocent enough, just venting about normal marriage stuff. But over time, it evolved into this place where I'd share everything about Keith, and I mean everything. Like how he thinks I don't notice when he sneaks off to the bathroom with his phone to jerk off because I've been turning him down for weeks. Or how he scrolls through Instagram models at night when he thinks I'm asleep. The thing is, I expected Keith to just know what I wanted without me having to spell it out. When he failed my unspoken tests, I'd get angry, and he'd have no idea why. Like last Valentine's Day, he got me flowers and chocolate. So generic I could scream. I didn't say anything, just quietly seethed, and then blasted him in the group chat for being unoriginal. My mom always taught me that if a man really loves you, he'll know what you want. Keith clearly didn't. I can admit now I've been subtly turning the kids against him too. Nothing major, just little comments like, "Daddy's too busy to play again," when he's working late, even though deep down I know he's working overtime. The kids have started running to me for everything, and treating Keith like he's an afterthought. It gives me this weird satisfaction that I'm not proud of. The group chat became increasingly mean as time went on. I started sending unflattering photos of Keith that I took without him knowing, like one of him bending over to pick something up, his shirt riding up to show his back fat and the top of his butt crack. Everyone responded with laughing emojis and jokes about how I should trade him in for a newer model. My sister Taylor would occasionally say things like, "Isn't that a bit harsh?" But I'd shut her down immediately with, "You don't understand what I deal with." My mom was worse. Whenever I'd share our arguments with her, she'd reinforce that Keith was the problem. "Men never change, honey," she'd say. "You just have to train them better." I knew Keith was saving up for something big. Probably that family vacation to Disney I've been hinting at for years. But I still complain to everyone that he never takes us anywhere. Meanwhile, I've been skimming money from our joint account into my personal savings that he doesn't know about, just in case things go south, you know? A girl needs security. The day everything fell apart started like any other. Keith tried to initiate sex that morning before work, running his hand up my thigh while I pretended to be more asleep than I was. I brushed him off with a, "I'm too tired" excuse. I saw the disappointed look on his face, but whatever. He left for work, and I dropped the kids at school before heading to my part-time job. When Keith got home that evening, he tried again, coming up behind me in the kitchen, kissing my neck while I was making dinner. I shrugged him off, annoyed that he couldn't take a hint. 20 minutes later, he mumbled something about needing to use the bathroom and took his phone with him. I knew exactly what he was doing in there, and it grossed me out. That's when I grabbed my phone and opened the group chat. "Guess who's beating his meat in the bathroom again?" I typed. Like clockwork, gets rejected and runs off to jerk it to Instagram models. The responses came flooding in immediately. "It's giving desperate creep vibes," Taylor wrote with a skull emoji. "Jerking off right before dinner? Girl, that's nasty," my friend Zoe added. "And he wonders why you don't want to touch him?" "Girl, bye," chimed in Rachel. I snapped a photo of the closed bathroom door and sent it to the chat. "Going on 5 minutes now, taking bets on what he's looking at in there." "Probably those gym girls he follows," Jess replied. "The ones with the fake everything." "Remember that pic I sent last week?" I wrote, referring to the unflattering photo I'd taken of Keith bending over. Hard to believe I ever found that attractive. My sister-in-law's husband lost like 30 pounds this year, and Keith just keeps getting bigger. "You could do so much better," my mom jumped in. She wasn't usually active in our group chat, but loved any opportunity to criticize Keith. I scrolled back through our chat to find the embarrassing photos I'd shared previously. There was the one of Keith sleeping with his mouth open, drooling a little. Another of him coming out of the shower with his stomach hanging over his towel. I took screenshots of these, along with our current conversation. Jess had missed today's chat and texted me privately asking what was going on, so I decided to send her the screenshots to catch her up. I selected the images, hit send, and then felt my stomach drop to the floor as I realized I'd just sent them to Keith instead of Jess in my contacts. They were right next to each other in my recent messages. "No, no, no," I whispered, my fingers frantically trying to unsend the messages. But it was too late. The little read receipt appeared almost instantly. Keith had seen everything while still in the bathroom. I tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent a flurry of texts. "Keith, I can explain. That wasn't what it looked like. Please talk to me," but no response. The water was still running in the bathroom, but there was complete silence otherwise. I stood frozen in the kitchen, dinner forgotten on the stove, as I heard the bathroom door slowly open. Keith emerged with a face I'd never seen before. His eyes were red, his jaw clenched tight. He walked silently past me to the bedroom, his phone clutched in his hand. I followed him, trying to come up with an explanation, an excuse, anything. "Keith, look," I started, but he cut me off. "Don't," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I saw everything, Mandy. Not just today's conversation, all of it." He was pulling clothes from his dresser, stuffing them into a gym bag. "Are you serious right now?" I said, defaulting to defensiveness. "You're overreacting. It's just girl talk." Keith looked at me with such disgust it made me step back. "Girl talk? You've been sharing private photos of me, mocking me with your sister, your friends, your mother, making fun of me for..." He couldn't even finish the sentence. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" "Whatever, I knew what you were doing in there," I said with an eye roll, trying to shift the focus. "It's not exactly a secret. And that makes it okay to share with everyone we know? To take pictures of me without my knowledge? To tell them all how disgusting you find me?" I didn't have a good answer for that, so I did what I always do when cornered. I turned it back on him. "Maybe if you hadn't let yourself go completely, I wouldn't have so much to complain about," I snapped. The look on his face changed from hurt to something harder. He zipped up his bag and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" "The kids will be back from my mom's in an hour," I said, starting to panic. "I can't even look at you right now," he said quietly. "I need some space to figure out what to do with all of this." As he reached the door, he turned back. "By the way, those extra hours I've been working, they weren't just because I wanted to avoid being at home with someone who clearly despises me. I was saving for that Disney trip you've been guilting me about for years." And with that, he walked out, leaving me standing in our bedroom surrounded by the mess I'd created. My phone buzzed with messages from the group chat, everyone wanting to know what happened after I stopped responding, including my sister, who was about to get a very uncomfortable call. I sat on the edge of our bed, scrolling through the group chat history with fresh eyes. Reading back my own words, seeing the photos I'd shared without Keith's knowledge, I felt a twinge of something. Not quite regret, he had let himself go after all, but maybe shame at being caught. I was so lost in my thoughts I almost didn't hear my phone ringing. It was my mother. "So what did that husband of yours do now?" she asked immediately. I didn't know how to explain that for once. I was the one who had messed up. So I didn't. "He saw the group chat," I said flatly, "all of it." "Oh," she replied, her tone shifting. "Well, maybe this is the push you needed to finally leave him. You deserve someone who appreciates you, honey." Even now, she was spinning this as Keith's fault, and part of me wanted to believe her, to sink back into the comforting narrative that I was the victim in our marriage. But the screenshots were right there on my phone, undeniable evidence of my cruelty. "I need to go, Mom. The kids will be home soon." I hung up and immediately got a text from my sister. Mandy, what the hell happened? Did Keith really see everything? I ignored it and went to the kitchen to salvage dinner, trying to figure out what I was going to tell Emma and Liam about why Daddy wasn't home. As I stirred the pasta that had nearly boiled over, I noticed Keith's lunch containers in the sink. He'd washed them before putting them away, something I'd complained about him never doing in the group chat just last week. I picked up my phone and navigated to our banking app, checking our joint account. There it was, a separate savings account I'd never paid attention to, with just over $4,000 in it. The Disney Fund. My phone buzzed again with another text from the group chat. This time it was Rachel. Do you think he'll leave for good? Because girl, you'd be better off. Remember what happened with my first husband? Best decision I ever made was kicking him out. I put my phone down and called my mom back. Can you keep the kids overnight? I asked. Keith and I need to talk, and I don't want them here for it. The next morning, I woke up alone in our bed. My phone showed multiple missed calls from my mother and messages from the group chat asking for updates. I ignored them all and called Keith instead. Hey, I said when he answered, my voice small. Can we talk? For real this time? There was a long pause. I don't know, Mandy. I'm not sure what's left to say. Please, I said, surprising myself with the desperation in my voice. I know I messed up. I need to talk to you face to face. Another pause. I'll come by after work, he finally said. When Keith arrived that evening, I had dinner ready, his favorite pasta dish that I hadn't made in months because I'd been on a low-carb kick. He looked surprised but sat down cautiously. I've been thinking a lot, I started, serving him a plate. About the things you said, about the way I've been treating you. Keith nodded but didn't speak, waiting for me to continue. I don't have a good excuse, I admitted. The group chat started as just normal venting, but it became this toxic echo chamber where everyone just validated my worst thoughts and encouraged me to see everything you do in the worst light. That doesn't explain taking private photos of me to mock with your friends, Keith said quietly, or telling them intimate details about our life. I felt shame wash over me. You're right, it doesn't. That was just cruel. And I can't believe I didn't see it that way until now. We ate in silence for a few minutes. What about the money? Keith finally asked. Were you planning to leave? I put down my fork, considering my answer carefully. The old me would have lied or deflected. The new me, or at least the me I wanted to be, needed to be honest. I don't know, I admitted. I think I was keeping my options open. My mom has always told me to have an escape plan. Keith's face hardened at the mention of my mother. Your mom has been undermining our marriage for years, and you've let her. I'm starting to see that, I acknowledged. I've ignored her calls since yesterday. Keith looked genuinely surprised. That's a first. I'm trying, Keith. I really am. I know I've been horrible. I know I've hurt you in ways that might not be fixable, but I want to try. He studied my face, searching for sincerity. Why? Yesterday you were ready to blame me for everything. What changed? I thought about it, wanting to give him a real answer, not just what he wanted to hear. Seeing it all laid bare like that, the screenshots, the bank statements, all of it, it was like seeing myself through your eyes for the first time, and I didn't like what I saw. Keith nodded slowly. I'd been ignoring a lot of red flags, telling myself it was normal marriage stuff. But seeing those conversations, realizing you'd been systematically humiliating me to everyone we know, I don't know if I can get past that, Mandy. I understand, I said quietly, though the thought of him actually leaving for good made my stomach drop. What can I do? To show you I'm serious about changing? Keith sighed deeply. I don't know if there's a quick fix here. Trust takes years to build and seconds to break. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I think we need professional help, couples counseling, at minimum, and you need to set some serious boundaries with your mom and your friends. I nodded quickly. I can do that, I will do that. And I need access to that separate account, he added. No more financial secrets. My instinct was to push back. That money was my safety net, my independence. But I swallowed my protest and nodded again. I'll transfer it back tomorrow. There's something else, he said, his face flushing slightly. The bathroom situation. We need to talk about that too. I felt my own face heat up with embarrassment. This was the conversation I'd been dreading. I know I've been rejecting you, I admitted. And I know that's why you take care of things yourself. Do you know how humiliating it was to read those messages? Keith asked, his voice strained. To see you and your friends laughing about something so private, something that only happens because you've made it clear you don't want me touching you? I stared at my plate, unable to meet his eyes. I'm sorry, I really am. It was cruel. Why? He asked simply. Why did you stop wanting me? Is it really just my weight? The question hung between us. The easy answer would be yes. His physical changes had turned me off. But the truth was more complicated. It's not just that, I said slowly. It's everything became so routine, so expected. I started seeing you as just a roommate who helps with bills and kids, and every time you've tried to connect, I've pushed you away, which just made the distance worse. So it's a cycle, Keith said. I try to connect, you reject me, I withdraw, you resent my withdrawal, and round we go. I looked up, a little startled by his insight. Yeah, I guess so. And somewhere along the way you decided it was easier to mock me with your friends than to actually work on our problems. The blunt truth of that statement stung. I'm sorry, I said again, knowing how inadequate it sounded. Keith was quiet for a long moment. I'm not perfect either, Mandy. I know I've let my health slide. I know I've been distant. I know I could communicate better. He took a deep breath. But I never stopped trying. I never stopped wanting this marriage to work. I never shared our private struggles with anyone else to make myself feel better. I felt tears welling up for the first time in our conversation. Not manipulative tears designed to shift focus, but genuine ones born from shame and regret. I want to try again, I whispered. For real this time. No group chat, no complaining to my mom, no secret bank accounts. Just us working on us. Keith studied my face, looking for sincerity. It won't be easy. I'm really hurt, Mandy, and honestly, I'm not sure I trust you anymore. I know, I acknowledged. I wouldn't trust me either, but I want to earn it back. He nodded slowly. I'll move back in, for the kids' sake at least. But we're sleeping in separate rooms for now. And we start counseling immediately. It wasn't the forgiveness I'd hoped for, but it was more than I deserved. Thank you, I said simply. That night, I made up the guest room for Keith while he picked up the kids from my mother's house. I overheard him telling her firmly that we were working through some things and needed space from outside influences. Her attempt to pull me aside when they returned was met with my first genuine boundary in years. Not now, Mom. This is between Keith and me. The look of shock on her face was almost comical. Over the next few weeks, we began the slow, painful process of rebuilding. Our first counseling session was brutal, laying bare all the patterns that had brought us to this breaking point. The therapist asked about my group chat behavior directly, not letting me minimize or deflect. What need was that fulfilling for you? She asked. Validation, I guess, I admitted. Everyone would agree with me about how Keith was the problem, so I didn't have to look at my part in things. Keith shared how emasculated he'd felt discovering the conversations, not just the bathroom mockery, but every little criticism I'd shared over the years. How he'd been working overtime for our family while I complained to others that he was never around. How he'd tried to connect physically only to be rejected, then mocked for his attempts to satisfy his needs privately. It wasn't easy hearing these truths, but for once, I forced myself to listen without interrupting or defending. My friends were less understanding about my sudden withdrawal from the group chat. Rachel, in particular, seemed personally offended that I was trying to work things out with Keith. After everything you've told us about him, she texted, you're just going to pretend those problems don't exist? The problems exist, I replied. But so do the good things I never bothered to mention. And mocking him behind his back wasn't solving anything. One by one, they either accepted my new boundaries or drifted away. My mother took longer, constantly finding reasons to call or stop by, always with some comment about Keith designed to stir up trouble. It took hanging up on her mid-sentence during a particularly nasty rant to finally get my point across. As for Keith and me, progress was slow but steady. He moved back into our bedroom after a month, though intimacy remained awkward and tentative. We were essentially dating again, learning to communicate without my usual passive-aggressive hints or his withdrawal. I started noticing the things he did right, instead of focusing exclusively on his flaws. He began making more effort with his appearance once he felt appreciated, rather than constantly criticized. The hardest part was repairing the damage I'd done with the kids. Breaking my habit of making subtle digs about Keith in front of them took constant vigilance. I started deliberately pointing out his strengths and thanking him for things in their presence. Slowly, the dynamic shifted. 6 months after the screenshot disaster, we took that Disney trip Keith had been saving for. Watching him with our kids, patient and present despite the crowds and heat, I felt a rush of genuine affection that had nothing to do with obligation or history. That night in our hotel room, after the kids were asleep, I turned to face him in bed. "I'm really grateful you gave us another chance," I said softly. "I'm grateful you became someone worth giving that chance to," he replied honestly. It wasn't perfect. We still had bad days. I still sometimes caught myself thinking critical thoughts that would have once gone straight to the group chat. Keith still sometimes withdrew when stressed, rather than communicating. But we were trying, really trying, to break the patterns that had nearly destroyed us. The irony wasn't lost on me. That accidentally sending those screenshots had been both the worst mistake of my life and the wake-up call I desperately needed. I'd nearly destroyed my marriage by exposing my husband's most private moments. But in doing so, I'd also exposed the worst parts of myself. The cruelty, the disloyalty, the manipulation that I'd been hiding behind a screen. I didn't deserve Keith's forgiveness. But I was working every day to become someone who might, eventually, be worthy of it.